Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Flow Photographica. My guest this episode is Sir Don McCullin, a photographer driven by the need to tell the story of human atrocity, who has made some of the most iconic images of war and who remains appalled by the schism in British society shaped by class and money. Now in his 80s, he has developed an instinct for landscape, particularly Somerset's, where he has lived for some 30 years and to where he was evacuated as a young boy. He has also latterly become known for his photographic essays on the remains and extremities of the Roman Empire. He was knighted in 2017. McCullin was born in Finsbury Park, a then poor neighbourhood of northeast London, on 9th of October 1935. As a child, he was twice evacuated, and on his return from his brutal second sojourn in Lancashire, he discovered a London that was transformed by the Luftwaffe. Bombed-out spaces became the playgrounds for youth all over the capital. Leaving school at 15 with no qualifications for a job on the railways, he was called up to national service in 1953. On his return, having been trained in photography and with his first camera, a Rolleicord, the young McCullin made a photograph called the Guvnors of several of his Finsbury Park acquaintances that included at least one armed robber, arranged in the shell of a bombed-out building. This made it into the Observer, and the rest, as they say, is history. McCullin would go on to define coverage of major conflicts of the second half of the 20th century, as well as covering disease and famine around the world. In particular, his coverage of the Vietnam War, Northern Ireland, AIDS in Africa, and famine in Biafra defined a graphical style of photographic reportage. But McCullin never forgot his working-class roots and the poverty that he grew up around. It continues to trouble him to this day, and when he photographed his own country, it was the vestiges of class and inequality that motivated. His 2007 book, In England, is a series of images of the country of McCullin's birth. The theme is the fault line that divides the country, rich and poor, north and south, opportunity and deprivation, and beauty, because England has great beauty. This conversation was recorded on the 25th of April 2019 at a hotel in central London. It was not intended for broadcast, but through our mutual friend, the great cricket photographer and photography collector Adrian Morell, whose voice you can hear from time to time, McCullin agreed to talk to me about his book In England. I had been commissioned to write about it for Black and White magazine. You can tell that I have a lot of work to do to polish my interview technique, but you can't hold it against me that I was a little in awe of this titan of photography, a man whose experience is so broad it seemed churlish to restrict the conversation to one book. Sir Don talks about his early days in the RAF, where he learned the craft of photography. He talks about the place of his birth and his meticulous approach to printing. He discusses his concerns over deteriorating negatives. We also discuss his distinct visual style, marked by deep blacks and striking contrasts, and he speaks candidly about his instincts as a photographer, his reluctance to romanticize the subjects, and his enduring passion for photography. The interview has been edited for clarity. I hope you enjoy it. Please let me know what you think in the comments if you're listening on YouTube. I give you Sir Don McCullin.
My negatives are beginning to fall apart because in the old days, you didn't have the dedicated technicians in darkroom. I used to wipe their hands on their overalls when they were growing the negs. And I've got negatives now that look like they have squash spiders.
Yeah, you got the veining.
Is that what you call it? Vein. Yeah, it's like varicose veins all over the bloody... And, I've tried to retouch those, and I'm not doing it anymore. And you can send that neg off and have it scanned. Yeah, you can't afford to send 60,000 negatives like I earn. You're quite right. I've got 20,000 colour transferences at my house, and 60,000.
They're okay.
Yeah, they've started. They're looking mouldy. Next thing I should probably find mushrooms on them.
Yeah.
Other Sunday Times are holding another 8,000 of them. They won't give them back.
So just for personal curiosity, I'm going to talk to you about about In England.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. But I just want to know, so when you were off around the world, you just sent your film back, did you?
No, I never did. Because I only did once, because I was in the fall of Phnom Penh at the end of Cambodia War, and I was instructed to go to Saigon. So I was left with no alternative but to go back to Bangkok on my way to Saigon, and I air freighted my film back. When I got to Saigon, I was arrested at the airport and kicked out the same moment. So I got back before my film got.
Oh, because you'd already sent your...
Yeah, I'd already sent my film. I was terrified that it wasn't going to get back. So it was all colour too. I did a whole colour essay on in 1972 the fall of a place called Dong Ha. It was the North Vietnamese suddenly came down the road with tanks the first time. So the war had shifted from the bush and the jungle to proper conventional warfare. So tanks appeared. The 3rd Division of the South Vietnamese Army ran down the road, threw their weapons away, took their boots off, left their wounded, and I did the story, which got me expelled on the last 2 days before the war ended. Can you believe that they took the trouble to kick me out? So,
So you'd sent your film back. So that was Transparency film.
Yeah, it was
Kodachrome.
No, it was Ektachrome. Kodachrome was too slow to use. The Ektachrome was pretty bad film. And it's a really poor relation to the Kodachrome. It was never sharp. It was never really, the colours were shifting all the time. And there was always a greenish, bluish tone, not that crisp in its definition. So I try to avoid it. I think, sod this, I'm going to do black and white. Yeah. So only yesterday, I saw Mike around and I said, do you remember whenever I used to leave on assignment for you, you always used to kind of beg me, Don, please do some comedy. Yeah, it was a colour magazine after. So we printed on duotone, black and white duotone, which had that kind of slightly blurry, blacky. If you see the magazines today, the colours are pretty appalling and they're fading like mad, But a black and white duotone in that colour, used to really come at you. Yeah, because I've been printing, for the last couple of weeks I was printing, I got through a lot of paper. I said, I think I'm losing my edge. I got down to one sheet of paper last week. The print is upstairs. Yeah, but it's going off to the Hamilton and it's all ramped up. But I got down to one sheet of paper on this 20 by 24, and you can't afford to do a sheet. No, wait, it's about 30 quid. So I said, Don, you're going to do this. You've got to make this print. I'd made 2 or 3 others, the actual print exposure time was about 6 minutes. Yeah, it was a long time to print. It's because of the sky. I was bringing the sky in, landscape, the Somerset levels, and I made the most stunning, beautiful print with my last sheet of paper. So what I do is before I make the initial attempt at the print, I have strips. I get one big sheet of paper, chop it up into strips, and think, I'm guiding myself back. But, this it wasn't even that print that was giving me hell last week. It was another picture I did. And when I saw the picture that I'd already done like some years ago, it's actually stunning.
Well, the print you'd already made of the same neck.
Yeah, and 2 necks, actually. Okay. Well, they're absolutely stunning. And then there I was striving away last week in the darkroom, and I thought, what's going on with you? You must be losing it.
So I remember when I was exclusively in the darkroom, the colour, the water temperature. There were days when I couldn't control.
You can't in the winter.
In the winter, you couldn't.
Mine's outdoors. You see. What I do, I have another tray underneath. I have more warm water.
Yeah. So when it's cold, and you just
but then I also, if I got warm water, I sometimes take the tray away, take the print, and dip it in warm water just to bring it on a bit. If I think I'm going to lose it,
right?
I've got I worked in a darkroom when I came out of the Air Force in Mayfair at Charles Street, and we had a little darkroom there that I used to copy line drawings on a 5x4 camera. And the man who was initially doing it, and I was taking over, gave me the tips he gave me were only 2 or 3, but they've. All my life, I've remembered them, and they've paid off handsome dividends to me.
Can you recount them here?
Yeah, one of the tips was that if you thought your print wasn't going to make it, you can completely face it down and leave it for a minute.
Make it as in it's not dense enough.
Not coming dense enough.
Yeah.
The other thing was, if you thought you wanted to enhance something, you could dip it in a bit of water, not hot water though, warm. As I've lukewarm, but, you're playing around with.
So do you take it out of the depth and into some...
Yeah, dance it in some warm oil, you bring the sky to come in, you see. And Ian said to me that one of the things you must always do with your prints, you must always have rocking them so that they're constantly, the chemist is constantly hitting all on that piece of paper. those are invaluable tips for me, and all my life I've been observing those tips.
I wonder how much longer you stood at the enlarger, because your prints, you've got big blacks in your prints, you've got dark, and if you printed conventionally, it's probably half the time. It's probably.
Well, as I just said, this print I did the other day took 6 minutes. Mostly the sky. The foreground, it took 45 seconds. Right, but then I was hudding.
Yeah,
I've got some 5.4 boxes of old negatives, and I use one of those because it covers the whole bottom of the landscape. I can move in on it. Do you know something? Being in the dark room, fighting for a print like that, is there's an enormous pleasure. It's like a game you're playing. You basically, it's a game of I must win, because after all, it's not about the cost of the photographic paper. It's about your professionalism. I don't want to lose that. You think I can do it. Why should I? But even at my age, I still make mistakes. The biggest mistake of all, of course, is switching the line on the whole box of paper. No, I haven't done that.
Paper is so expensive now.
Yeah. 350 quid.
350 quid for a box sheet of 16.
But 350 quid plus VAT.
I'm surprised that they charge you for it in a way.
Why?
Because the Tate, one of the great photographic feats of our time. I know that you printed every print for that exhibition. Now, I know physically how demanding that is. I didn't count the number of prints in the exhibition, but it is a huge.
It's just there are 8,000 more prints in a holding place in North London, storage. And I've got another 600-700 prints in my house, which I've been making over the last 2 or 3 years. So I know I said to my wife this morning, I was lying a bit upstairs and I started coughing. I said to my wife, do you know something? I think finally the darkroom chemistry is beginning to get to my lung. I haven't got a very good system in my darkroom, ventilation system. You could say it's almost non-existent.
In the film, you use your hands to take out and everything. You don't use tongs.
No, I don't use tongs. I don't use masks. I've tried a mask and tongs. It's like the biggest fear, of course, is handling those prints. But handling those prints is like dealing with a newborn baby. If you dent it, it's valueless, and so it goes in the wash. The other day, I said to Catherine, I was making a cup of tea in the kitchen. I said I can't hang about. I'm going to go out. When I went back in, as the water had all siphoned away from the. It sucked one of the prints and folded it in half. Yeah. And there was a print. It took me like an hour to do, and it was gone. Really.
But that is what's so great about it as well, isn't it? In the sense,
challenging is a better word, actually.
Well, challenging. Yeah. I was going to say that every print that you've made is a struggle, and that anybody who has one of those prints has a little bit of your struggle.
I only made like 7 prints last week. Yeah, but they were challenging as hell, and.
You mentioned in the introduction to this, you mentioned Bill Brandt.
Well, of course, I tell you why. After I took the picture of the gang many years ago and he has published it, I met a man called, I think his name was Norman Smith, and I think he ran, it wasn't creative photography, it was one of those ancient photographic magazines. It was called Photography. He favoured Bill Brandt and virtually brought Brandt in, and Brandt became in the early 60s quite distinguished then. But even though Brandt came to England in 1933, I think. But so I said, I'd like to meet Bill Brandt. He said, well, I'll give you his phone. And I rang Bill Brandt. And Bill Brandt said, do come see me. I live in Belsize Avenue. And I went there to his place. I saw him one day at the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition. And he said, and he was like I described him as a sparrow. And he said, oh, it's Bill, is he? He said, it's just Don. He said, dear, and while I was looking at him, I realised that he was wearing a very nice overcoat, but his silk scarf was totally mothy. Right. And it was keeping up appearance. Yeah. But he was very, very sweet. People ring me up and I can't say, yes, come and see me. But, having seen him, and it was the beginning of inspiration, which you desperately need as a young photographer. It's not badly printed. No, it's not bad. How many books? It must be. There is. But I think I've done, about a dozen books that I'm pleased with, and there's lots of other kind of books that are not totally books. So, I think I've done, a dozen that I'm pleased with, and we're about to possibly reprint my Southern Frontiers book.
Well, I've actually bought a copy of
You've got that?
Yeah, I have. It wasn't a big print run.
2000. And it didn't sell well.
Yeah.
Where did you buy yours and when?
Well, I got mine in part exchange. I was doing some work for a literary agent. I'd done some printing for her, and she runs a bookshop called Lutchens and Rubenstein in Notting Hill. And your book, they had a copy of Southern Frontiers, and I said, "Well, I'll take that. Thanks very much."
Well, I tell you, it was on Amazon for about 700 quid.
Really?
So if we reprint it, it's going to piss off the people who pay 700 quid. But anyway,
well, no, because it's the first edition.
I see what you mean.
And if it's the first.
The McCullins have only got well, there's one.
Well, it's a very important book because that's the last of that.
Yeah, because when I went back to Syria last year and heard the damage, so that's going to be. But I'm going to go back to Lebanon probably to top up the book if we.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to revise it. This is
Homecoming with Jack Miller.
Yeah.
This is Cape.
Yeah, they do a good job.
Well, it's done by a man called Mark Holborn.
Right. You mean when you say done by? Do you mean it was all
designed by?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, my landscape book. Not only did he design it, he also wrote the introduction. Which was really, really beautiful. So
I thought your introduction here is really beautiful.
Oh, did I do that?
A thing that struck me when I was reading it was that you were evacuated to Somerset.
Yeah, where I lived now. Yeah,
and then you left. In the introduction, you say that you didn't know why you had to go because you were so young and you were evacuated.
Oh yeah, during the war.
And then when you came back, the whole place had been destroyed. I mean, London
of it. I was only 7 when I finally got back up war because I must have been about 9 when I came back. But I got evacuated twice, and I went to Lancashire. It was actually sent to near Preston in Lancashire, and I was 7 years old, and I had a really hard time. I was on a chicken farm, and they locked us out until 10 o'clock at night in the winter, and I did have a bath for 18 weeks. It was really, the man was very violent. If I didn't eat my Sunday lunch, I'd get punched, and the whole thing. I mean, this day and age, you'd be locked up for that. But so that background of my even from that age, that height, so I was suffering the kind of all kinds of vile degradations. And in a way, looking back at it, last night someone said at this talk, I was with Fergal Key, and he was saying, it was the making of me, that hardship, because I when I came to these places, or I had to sleep rough, or I was in stinking doss houses and places, didn't affect me at all. I knew exactly what to take on board. It became our playground. We actually had wonderful exploratory kind of places to go at other people's houses. We'd get into other people's houses at the age of 7, 9 or 7. There was a period when I came back from Somerset. I was still around in 1941 when the bombing was bad. As little kids, because our mothers and parents didn't worry what we did in the daytime. We just went off exploring in Bolton houses. It was an extraordinary freedom, and it was extraordinary if I think back. And I often pinch myself and say, did you really say that, do that, see that? I take this. Even now I say, what made you go to Vietnam? What made you go to Berlin and photograph the war with one camera? So you wouldn't quite get it the way it seems, but there were kind of thoughts and voices not so much voices, but thoughts saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. If I said it was voices, I'd be mad. I'd get locked.
There was a compulsion to.
Yeah, there was a kind of an emotional compulsion telling me that I'd have to go to Berlin or I'd have to go to this. So anyway,
an instinct.
Instinct is another good word. Yeah. But a lot of people have instincts. They don't act on them.
You started in the dark. And Adrian and I were just talking about this because in the RAF, you were turned down to become a photographer.
Yeah, because I failed the theory paper. Yeah, I wasn't very good either. I think photography discovered me. I didn't discover it. By taking that one picture that Sunday afternoon of that gang, once it was published, bang, I had everyone in England offering me contracts and things, but I wasn't a photographer, you see.
You had access to these guys, I suppose, in a way that...
Well, I went to school with them.
So you knew them all, and they...
Yeah, we didn't... We went to school. We hardly went to school. But, there's a bank robber amongst that boy sitting down as a bank robber.
Oh, right.
Armed bank robbery.
What's later to become?
Yeah, he got 8 years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just after that picture was taken. And that was where I lived. That was where I lived in.
And so So this was 58. So there was still,
my first picture.
13 years after the end of the Second World War.
Yeah,
there was still dangerous buildings in the middle of London, which I can't even imagine.
They were dangerous because I remember in my autobiography talking about we were climbing in derelict buildings. It was like climbing the Eiger, I think. So then, you're in a totally unsafe building. We were terrible as boys. We'd climb the top of those buildings, had pee from the top. You silly boys. And we'd have our school lunch. We'd get a roll and stuff it with chips and climb to the top of those buildings. Sit there and contemplate what a load of arseholes the teachers were. I'd have a wee down from top to bottom. So, it was the psychology of youth and childhood.
The darkroom experience you had then in the RAF. Yeah. So before you picked up your Rolly cord and you'd taken this picture, you'd spent 2 years pretty much printing
in the RAF.
In the RAF.
Yeah, because all I was doing, I spent the first year in Egypt, and I was put into a caravan, which is even less inner space. So we started at 6 o'clock in the morning and we finished at 1 o'clock. It was too hot to work. What were you printing? Printing aerial maps of Suez Canal, because we were pulling out, you see. So they documented everything. And then I went from there after a year down to Nairobi, where we were then processing the film from a Canberra bomber, which had 6 cameras, which it meant 6 lots of work. And those cameras were then brought back to us. Film was processed by people in our section. And then I would spend the night probably printing 3,500 aerial pictures. Well, it was called a bulk processor. It was a machine that went up and down into it would be about as large as this room. And I sit at the end. Once you switched it on, it did itself. I sit at the end chopping the pictures up with a guillotine, And then in the morning, they would go to the intelligence services in Nairobi. And they get their glasses out and look for camps and Mau stuff. So one day, I got on a lift in an aeroplane called a Harvard. The Harvard was very akin to the Japanese Zero. Harvard was an American airplane, so you could go for rides with the matters. I went in the Lincoln bomber once, and while they were bombing the mountains, and I'd sit in the nose cone, So it was quite an exciting start to my life. And then one day they said, "Oh, do you want to go to a flight?" And the Harvard in the back, I said, "Yeah, I'll get my camera." So I got my old Rolleifield camera, which is most unhelpful. And I took a picture of the camp, which was breaking all the security rules. And we were selling them for a shilling each. So one day, the sergeant came into the photographic unit and said, he found, they knew he was coming and everybody fled, But what we didn't do was put away a whole stack of paper we chopped up to make the prints. He said, someone's up to something naughty here. He said, someone... we used to do printing to sell pictures in the camp, but the money we got for it, we used to use for buying tea and biscuits and, So he came in and said, hello, some bastards up selling here, and we just put the bloody paper away. But I made, I made some money. And I should have been locked up, really.
And they like selling them as mementos to the people on the camp.
Well, they'd all buy one. Really home. Send it home and say, "Dear Mum and Dad, this is our camp for the year." This is so violating the security rules.
So
that's the Rolleifield camera I used, which I took that picture with there.
There's some.
It's my neighbours where I grew up.
So that's just titled Finsbury Park, London, 1961. And I remember you talking about this in the film, and also because when you go home to your old home and you go out into the garden at the back, and
on the film we went into the garden, and the lady in there, it was a lovely woman she was. And I pointed out to her that there was an air raid shot there that my mother knocked down with an Adam hammer.
And there's one in the next door garden.
That's correct, But my mother knocked that air and said, "Dug a big hole in the garden. It's all under the garden."
Oh, really?
I forget. It was this way nothing grows there.
So the book opens with landscapes. You've got a picture of Land's End. In fact, the book opens and kind of closes with a picture of Land's End.
Oh yeah, yes.
So when you open the book, before you even get to the introduction, you go through
a few landscapes. It was the designer's idea. I never saw why they needed to do that, really,
because it's not just landscapes. Okay, because it's sort of. But so
and they're taken at different times.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wasn't...
They're all, most of my landscapes are taken in the winter time. I prefer winter. There's only 2 or 3 pictures in my collection of landscapes that got foliage on the leaves, but I like the winter because it gives the final, ultimate X-ray of the landscape. You can see the skeleton.
Yeah. So your appreciation of England is
not tourist board.
Not tourist.
John Fowles, the writer, came to my house once.
Oh, yeah.
And he wrote an introduction to a book I did called Open Skies. And he said in it that the English tourist board wouldn't take kindly to the way I see it.
Nor up north or when you go up to...
that's slum clearance, is it?
Yeah.
Well, look at the shoes. There's always detail in photography, and you have to look... Sometimes you look for it, or it's obvious it's there, but
were you aware at the time
of the girl?
But of her shoes?
No, I wanted a human figure come amongst what looks like a kind of almost Dresden type land.
Totally, yeah. It really is. But you have 2 views of Britain. One is urban, I suppose, if you like, and then the other one is the landscapes. You're very much a Londoner, and I see you as a Londoner. I sort of imagine.
But I'm not deep down. I am so countrified it isn't true.
Right.
You've been to my house, haven't you?
Yeah.
My house last week with the blossom was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And yet it was 2 chocolate boxes for me.
Yeah.
I've got guinea fowl in my garden now. They were running around screaming and behaving bonkers that they are. And the truth is that, the one thing about me is I'm more aware than people think.
Right.
I might be agreeable, but I'm sometimes not always totally agreeable. But what I'm saying to you is that these things haven't appeared in there by accident.
Sure.
I am very aware of what my almost premeditating what my next move's going to be. Sure. Because when I scan something, as soon as I arrive, I either know it's going to work or it's not. In that case, I knew something was quite interesting there, but I needed a human being to set it up. And what more could I ask for? And when you take a picture, those legs have to be in that position, walking, a human walking. If there was a slight pause, it wouldn't be right. That is right for me.
Well, so did you wait for this picture?
Yeah, of course. I waited for her. As soon as I saw the picture, I knew there was a picture, but I knew there was a jigsaw puzzle with the central piece missing.
Do you remember? Did you have a few exposures?
I may have done a couple of her,
right?
Or I may have done some other people. I'm not sure now.
So, where does the graphic nature of your work come from?
It becomes very automatic. As soon as I see, I know exactly where I'm going to come. I know my eyes are very fast. My emotional eyes are fast. And
does that count the same for what I would call that landscape work as well? It might be urban, but it is sort of landscape. Yeah. And but does that count the same for conflicts, let's say, or it's the same experience?
My eyes are. It's necessary to be quick in conflict.
Yes,
that's where the speed of my eyes came from.
Yeah,
this is I have more time, but I know I'm still quick. It's the conflict that you have to be quick because otherwise you're going to miss the picture. But a picture like that, you don't have to be quick. The train.
Oh, the train. So this is a story about Don McCullin, Yorkshire, 1967. But that is, arguably, that is just as finely crafted and composed. And because the moment
that everything's in the right place.
It's just
we have smoke on the train. We have that kind of winter light. We have the kind of.
But another photographer, it's kind of specious to compare. But another photographer wouldn't have brought the blacks in.
Oh, wouldn't he?
No, another photographer might have let the tone flow.
I'm always accused of making my prints dark, but that is my hallmark.
But what is it that draws you to the darkness?
Well, I'm showing the grittiness of the dirt. And
are you trying to counter people's sort of, if you like, chocolate box, but puncture their illusions?
Yeah, no, I suppose you're right, really. But what I'm trying to do is that. I'm trying to make sure you look at my picture and you don't forget it. And I print it with the intensity to make you aware. You cannot turn away until you understand what you've been looking at.
Yeah.
All my pictures have been derived from my, everything I do is about intense and kind of visual awareness. And that's why it's black and white all the time. Steve McCurry's work is is there to seduce you. It's too comfortable.
I get a great deal of joy looking through your work, but there is that sort of, there's nothing very particularly demonstrably uplifting about it.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it's not meant to be that kind of experience. No, it's meant to inform you that there are many things that inform you, but A is that you're so much better off knowing you're not one of those bad people. And secondly, you're saying to yourself at the same time, even though I'm okay, I cannot really feel comfortable knowing that people are living like that. There are many things within what I do, there are many situations within what I do that are worth kind of, checking out.
Do you see this picture of Birmingham 1970s of the three guys? One of them's in a poor party hat by a car. That one. I mean, when you look at some of these pictures, do you ever see the person that you might have been had you not got out of
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would have still tried to have avoided becoming a criminal. I had all the chance in the world to become a criminal because of the peer pressure on me, but I made sure it wasn't going to happen to me. I never liked the idea of being incarcerated. But what photography does, in some cases, it makes you very inquisitive. You will go that last furlong to believe in yourself and think, I never give up if I'm. And then, photography is like fishing in a way. You're sitting by the bank, you fish. If you don't catch a fish, you still had a nice day. And if you do catch a fish, you feel doubly rewarded. Yeah. And you even put that fish back. So what you're doing is you're going through a process that, in a way, is going to give you pleasure. I've never been disappointed in photography. Even if I didn't get the picture, I've been like the man on the fishing quays. It's privileged to have such a lifestyle like that. Yeah.
It is. I mean, the picture, this picture is what I absolutely love. There's something I really.
Is it the tailoring on that?
It's the way that he looks so
skins raw.
It's got skins raw in the back.
In need of shit,
and he has no advantages.
You know what that is? That is a classic recipe for a kind of gourmet meal. A gourmet meal for a photographer.
It's gourmet thing.
Oh, many negative. Yeah, you got all the crap. You got this and you got bad tailoring. You got this poor young man. So
yeah, you know that in him that there is somehow there's a future. And all this degradation is old England.
Yeah.
The nasty...
The old Victorian England satanic cities.
And there's a brilliant line that you have in the introduction, which is that there was and remains an aggressive peculiar to England.
The only people in England who were allowed to be eccentric, apart from totally insane people, were the wealthy people. They were the eccentrics, like the guy who lives in Longley, painted those appalling pictures. Do see eccentricity, but they're normally by people who are suffering from mental breakdowns. Well, I mean, that is a picture that reflected what was going on this week, only like 50 years ago.
This is Aldermaston, early 1960s.
Yeah, but
a National Front?
No, she's an Aldermaster anti-Bob. And secondly, you see, she knows she's going to be arrested. She's come prepared with the kind of... This is National Front. This boy, quite courageous, he's trying to rip out this guy who's a National Front guy. He's trying to rip out some paper. So he's taking his life in his hands with that lot because they would have kicked him. This was in Holloway Road. I like demonstration because photographically you can't miss. It looks like they made their average. Yeah, they were exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you know what changes? Photography, black and white photography, is like laying down wine in a cellar. Like in 30 years' time, it's all going to look so... He's hardly wear ties anymore.
Yeah.
Apart from Mr. McCullin. It's just a habit that I won't give up. But then that's Tyndall on the right. It was a total hard knot.
How did this picture come about?
Well, because the Observer said that they had arranged for me to go and visit them in Princedale Road in Notting Hill, a very posh area. Yeah. And they said, and I said, is it going to be okay? He said, yeah, we've arranged, you can go in and photograph them. I couldn't believe my luck. But then a week later, they had their first rally in Trafalgar Square. And then it was unbelievable. The brawling started. Right. The word go. This is another riot altogether. This was in Lewisham.
Have you photographed anything to do with Brexit?
No, I haven't actually. I've got to stage now where I think I've done everything I wanted to do in photography. I mean, I got to the stage where I'm coming to either to the knacker's yard or the meadow for the old donkey. That's been a beautiful. I'm now in the green pastures, and that's where I am. I'm kind of heading now.
But you take pictures.
Pardon?
You still take pictures
all the time.
Yeah.
What have I done lately? Photography. Well, I went to last year. I went to Palmyra and did that. And then when we made this film about England, which I just made, I went to the Revival Festival in Bedford, and I did some other pictures. But I'm doing landscape, But now I look at this book, I take back what I said. I got confused with her. No, but it hasn't badly printed this. This is England's eccentrics. These people, they turn up at all these do's and that. They love dressing up. Yeah. They love being weird.
Did you take these pictures for the book?
I always take photographs, not for publication. I take them for myself.
Sure.
Even if I'm commissioned.
Right.
I don't care about the publication. I'm doing them for myself.
Yeah.
So I went to Glyndebourne, for the film I made recently. But it's a very strange place, Glyndebourne. I know the owner, and he said to me, his name's Gus, he came over to me, he was having dinner, he came over and spoke to me, he said, "Is this another film about them and us?"
So
it wasn't. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't about them. It was about me, about the way I see my own nation. When I look at these pictures, I even think, Christ, did I take those pictures, Because to do this kind of work now is, but you know something? You never see photographers out and about the way I did. And when I was doing all these pictures, I'd never see another photographer. There's something lazy about some photographers. Bone idle. They won't pay over a roll of film themselves. They want somebody else to pay over it. They won't commission themselves to go abroad. That's why all these books appear, because I've bullied myself for the last 65 years. This reminds me of an August Sander film. But you know why? Because I've looked at everyone in the world's work, and there's nobody who's escaped my eye. And therefore, there's something slightly stains off on you. I've got great heroes. I like a man called Joseph Sudak. There are other people. Who else did I? That's a really quite a strong indictment, that picture. If you look at the faces in Parting Up Parade at Sandhurst, then it's the English.
Yeah.
That type of English person is not particularly attractive. They're often people who are very pleased with themselves and look down on others. And that makes me feel uncomfortable.
And in a way, because you've escaped your background, if I can put it like that.
Yeah.
And you now travel the world, and you're on terms with people that you would never have known had you stayed in Finsbury Park.
I'm just, as I said, photography found me, and I'm grateful, because otherwise I would have had a miserable life.